How did a prestigious American university conduct one of the most unethical experiments of all time? Let's examine how one professor sent students on a multi-day horror show with scars that they still carry to this day. This is the infamous Stanford prison experiment. In 1971, Professor Zimbardo was given approval to conduct a unique experiment examining the psychology of prison guards and prisoners. A building on campus would be turned into a prison, complete with iron bars and a solitary confinement room. Students would be randomly assigned the position of guard or prisoner, and play out their roles for 2 weeks at the mock prison. Prisoners would be confined to their cell life 24/7. The guards, on the other hand, would run alternating 8-hour shifts and go home afterwards. Of some 75 applicants, 24 college-age males were deemed physically and mentally fit for the experiment. The group was split in half, 12 guards and 12 prisoners. Dr. Zimbardo gave the prison guards military surplus khaki uniforms and reflective glasses. They were also given wooden batons. This was meant to study the effect of elevating them above their peers, while letting them hide behind the anonymity of the reflective glasses. Dr. Zimbardo assigned one of the guards as warden, and decided that he himself would be the prison superintendent. The experiment started with an absolutely shocking display. The mock prisoners were in no way prepared for the intense program Dr. Zimbardo had in mind. He secured help from the local police and had them go arrest every one of the mock prisoners at their homes. The students had no warning of this, and were in some cases embarrassed publicly as they were arrested in public areas. Prisoners were then driven to the actual police station, where they received the entire booking treatment. They were fingerprinted, photographed, Mirandized, and filmed by local news. Then the police drove them to the Stanford University prison. Here they were actually strip searched completely naked by the fake guards, and in front of cameras. This was the real prison experience, you see. They were issued a prison smock with sandals. No underwear were returned to the prisoners. Each prisoner's smock had a unique number sewn onto it. They were given a set of rules and explained the routine of the prison. No prisoner was ever to be called by their name, only the number on their chest. This was day 1. Dr. Zimbardo instructed his guards to enforce discipline. It was all part of the experiment. He wanted them to be riled up constantly to measure the effects. On day 2, the prisoners began to rebel. Physical altercations in the form of shoving and barricading doors took place. Shouts against Dr. Zimbardo and his experiment were also heard, but the guards re-established control. Now the guards separated the good and bad prisoners, and furthered their mental abuse in order to punish them.
The guards would strip them naked, delouse them, pretending that they were lice. It's kind of a degradation ritual. And after the first day, I was about to end it because nothing was happening. But the next day, on the morning of the next day, the prisoners rebelled. And what the guards did, they came to me and said, "The prisoners are rebelling, what are we going to do?" I said, "It's your prison. Whatever you want, I will do it, but you've got to tell me." And they said, "We have to treat force with force." So they broke down the doors. Stripped the prisoners naked, dragged them out. Some of them, they tied up their feet. They put them in solitary confinement, which was a tiny little hole in a closet, about this big, dark. And they said, at this point, everything but breathing air is a privilege. Food is a privilege, clothes are a privilege, having a bed is a privilege. And so the guards began to say, here are the new rules. And the new rules are, you are dangerous, and we are going to treat you as such.
Solitary confinement was used, as well as depriving prisoners of food and bathroom privileges. A solitary confinement room had been set up ahead of time, but the guards improvised their own tortures. Misbehaving prisoners were given a bucket to urinate and defecate in. Sleeping cots were removed from the cells as punishment. Prisoners were forced to sleep on the cold floor with nothing more than the long t-shirt smock as clothing. Fear ran through the prisoner population. Behave or lose toilet and cot privileges. Hate of one's fellow prisoner also spread, as the students blamed others for the harsh treatment, or accused some of snitching to get on the guards' good side. Other common punishments were being made to wear a bag over one's head for hours, or getting impromptu push-up orders. 2 of the rebellious prisoners were even made to do mock homosexual acts on each other in their cell. After 36 hours on day 3, prisoner 8612 either faked or genuinely had a mental breakdown. He was removed from the experiment. On day 4, prisoner 819 began crying uncontrollably in his cell. A priest was brought in to counsel with prisoner 819, along with Dr. Zimbardo. It was decided to send prisoner 819 home. On his way out, the guards forced inmates to shout, "Prisoner 819 is a bad prisoner." On day 5, the first ray of hope shone through, as family members were allowed to visit the prisoners for 10 minutes. This was done to simulate actual prison life. The visitors were not allowed to see the cells, but many of them complained to Dr. Zimbardo that their relatives seemed malnourished and weak. Some parents even left seeking out lawyers to have their children released, as all participants signed a legal document allowing them to be kept there. It was also this day that 2 of his fellow professors came to observe the experiment, and were horrified by the guards' behavior. Zimbardo was convinced by his colleagues that the experiment was out of control. As the prison superintendent, his motives were warped, and the guards had been abusing prisoners at an unreasonable level. This meant no objective outsider was in charge to pull the plug if it went horribly wrong, like it did. Finally, on day 6, Dr. Zimbardo announced the experiment would end early. They didn't even make it to 1 week, let alone 2. Many who participated are still scarred by the ordeal to this day. The prisoners feel betrayed by their fellow young students, who they felt were supposed to play a role for science, not humiliate them with strip searches and mental torture. Though some of the prison guards feel the experiment was more of a game, and that complaints from the prisoners were overblown, some guards are haunted by their participation in it. They wonder, why did I do that to another person? Or, why did I just follow orders like a Nazi? And somewhere in this giant mess, there are lessons to learn. Even though prison guards claimed they acted so aggressively because it was what Dr. Zimbardo wanted and the experiment required, it is still strange they would do these horrible things. These other men were not criminals, and for but the flip of a coin, any one of them could have ended up a prisoner instead of a guard. I think it does teach us something about how a Nazi or communist member can get wildly out of control. It's similar to the Milgram experiment, where a person of authority can order you to do horrible things, and most will obey. And maybe we shouldn't be so surprised by this. Isn't every continent and every race filled with horrible totalitarian regimes that have men just like the Stanford prison guards?